ChatGPT said. It began as whispers, subtle, uneasy murmurs floating through the basketball world. The kind of talk that makes even the most seasoned fans pause. Then, in one stunning instant, the whispers turned into reality. Stephanie White, the coach who had once carried the vision of the Indiana Fever, was out. And in her place stood a name no one saw coming, Larry Bird. A living legend. A symbol of Indiana basketball. A Hall of Famer stepping into the WNBA. The announcement didn't just dominate headlines, it bent the very arc of basketball history. The league didn't shift. It cracked open. Caitlin Clark, the rookie phenom who had already become the face of the franchise, stepped to the mic that night, her voice steady, her message simple. Larry Bird, she said. 2 words. Enough to freeze the arena. The reaction was instantaneous. The packed house inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse fell silent. Cheers died mid-breath. Every ear strained. Every heartbeat aligned. Every eye locked onto a future that had just been rewritten. This wasn't just a coaching change. It was a statement. A disruption. A move that defied the playbook. Analysts scrambled for answers. Was this strategy? Was it panic? Or was it the boldest gamble in WNBA history? Nobody expected this. Not the fans, not the media, and certainly not Caitlin Clark. She had been at the center of a cultural explosion, but now she found herself sharing the spotlight with a basketball immortal. And as the weight of that reality sank in, one question hung in the air: who was really in control? Was this a reflection of Clark's growing influence? A front office power move? Or was it something deeper, a challenge to the very way women's basketball defines leadership? The old rules were gone. With Bird's arrival, the line between player and coach, between vision and identity, blurred. The WNBA wasn't just evolving, it was being remade, moment by moment, in front of the world. But Bird's arrival didn't happen in a vacuum. The seeds were planted in a post-game press conference, when Stephanie White, after a tough win, described Clark's injury absence as a blessing in disguise. Intended as praise for the team's resilience, the comment landed like a gut punch. To fans, it felt like an insult. To Clark, it felt personal. She wasn't just a player. She was the reason Indiana was relevant again. The reason tickets were selling, the reason the spotlight was back on the Fever. Calling her absence a blessing felt like erasure. The internet reacted instantly. Clips of the quote flooded timelines. Hashtags surged. Angry fans tore apart every word. "She's saying Caitlin holds the team back," one viral post declared. Another hit harder: "I wouldn't shed a tear if Clark never returned." White's reputation, once solid, began to crumble. Her words, meant to uplift, had triggered a storm. The narrative flipped overnight. No longer a mentor. Now a barrier. Behind closed doors, the tension was no secret. Clark herself admitted as much during a podcast, speaking candidly about the growing disconnect. Her fast-paced, intuitive style clashed with White's system. Even games where Clark dominated, 32 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds, left her feeling boxed in. She remembered being benched after a turnover despite nearly logging a triple-double. What others called discipline, she called suppression. She wasn't built for fear. She was built for rhythm, instinct, and momentum. Yet under White, every instinct was second-guessed. Every burst of energy pulled back. Late-game strategies slowed to a crawl. Leads were managed instead of grown. Clark didn't want to be compared to a more restrained peer. She didn't want to be Paige Buchers. She wanted to be herself, unfiltered, fearless, and free. And fans agreed. Soon, questions that once seemed taboo became unavoidable. Was White the right coach for Caitlin Clark? Her resume was strong. Her track record, respected. But greatness isn't just about experience. It's about fit. About synergy. And above all, about trust. Clark needed freedom. White offered structure. The clash became too loud to ignore. The backdrop to all this: Clark's explosion into cultural relevance. She wasn't just dominating on the court, she was transforming the entire WNBA. From the moment she stepped into Indiana, everything changed. Ticket sales jumped over 400%. Games became national events. People drove across states just to watch her warm up. Every logo three, every no-look dime, every flash of brilliance rippled across social media. She didn't just represent a team. She embodied a movement. The Fever's identity shifted overnight. Corporate sponsors who once hesitated now scrambled to get in line. Local businesses rebranded in her image. National brands followed. Global campaigns lit up. Indiana had become the heartbeat of women's basketball, and Caitlin Clark was the pulse. So when White's words undercut that force, there was no recovering. The friction became final. The trust was broken. The relationship untenable. And then, Larry Bird walked through the door. This wasn't just a personnel decision. This was a declaration. The Fever weren't chasing consistency. They were chasing greatness. Larry Bird didn't arrive to maintain the system. He came to burn the system down and build something new. In that frozen moment at Gainbridge, as thousands of fans held their breath, as Caitlin Clark stood beside history, the future of the WNBA came into focus. It wasn't about titles yet. It was about transformation. The WNBA hadn't just changed. It had detonated. And nothing would be ordinary again. The Indiana Fever had become a powerhouse. Media coverage followed not as occasional features, but as daily storylines, talk shows, front-page articles, late-night interviews. Caitlin Clark was everywhere. Her influence extended far beyond the court, reshaping not only the Fever's fortunes, but the entire WNBA's standing in the broader sports landscape. Social media became her empire. Every highlight clip went viral. Every stat line sparked debate. Every post-game interview became a headline. Fans who had never watched a WNBA game before now tuned in religiously. Hashtags trended nightly. Millions followed her every move, not just as a player, but as a phenomenon. Clark wasn't just the face of a franchise, she had become the face of the league. Her influence carried unprecedented weight. Behind the scenes, reports emerged that her voice reached into organizational decisions, from strategic direction to coaching philosophies. She wasn't just playing the game. She was shaping its very structure. That kind of influence made the Fever's decision all the more powerful. Rarely, if ever, does a rookie become the architect of a franchise's future. But Clark had rewritten the rules. Her presence gave Indiana leverage, vision, and an entirely new identity. She wasn't just their star. She was their future, their financial engine, their cultural heartbeat. Every decision now revolved around her. And when the tension between Clark and head coach Stephanie White became too public, too volatile to ignore, the organization faced its defining choice: cling to tradition or embrace transformation. The answer came in the form of a name that needed no introduction: Larry Bird. Larry Bird's name is etched into the DNA of basketball. 3 NBA championships. 3 MVPs, 12 All-Star appearances. A career that didn't just succeed, but defined an era. And when his playing days ended, Bird didn't fade. He became a coach, leading the Indiana Pacers to the Eastern Conference Finals, and later, an executive, crafting rosters with surgical precision. Bird was never just a player. He was a strategist. A visionary. A force who could transform individuals and entire organizations. Now, that force was stepping onto the WNBA stage, carrying the weight of Indiana basketball pride into an entirely new arena. His story couldn't be separated from his roots. From the small town of French Lick, Indiana, Bird rose with grit, toughness, and unshakable resolve. His battle with Magic Johnson in the legendary 1979 NCAA championship remains one of the most iconic moments in sports history. He may have lost the game, but he gained immortality. His icy focus, calculated execution, and relentless competitiveness captivated the world. Decades later, his name still silences rooms. And now, that name was about to be spoken in the same breath as Caitlin Clark.